I'm the girl they abandoned in a small Italian village without money, without a phone, without warning. My sister and her friends claimed it was just a prank, harmless fun. But being deserted alone in a foreign country wasn't the worst part. It was discovering they had calculated it all, that they laughed while doing it. And when I eventually found my way back, another betrayal was waiting, one that cut deeper than I could have imagined. Would you ever forgive them if your own blood did this to you? Before we continue, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what you would have done in my shoes. I'd love to know. I'm Odell Vance, youngest of 3 siblings. I've always been the quiet one, the peacekeeper who said everything's fine when it clearly wasn't. That's been my role at every family gathering, every milestone, every funeral. They praised it as composure. I saw it as a survival tactic. This Italian vacation was supposed to mark a new beginning, a way to rebuild bridges. Zanaya messaged me with a stunning photo of the Amalfi coastline with a heart emoji. Her friends had already made arrangements and insisted I join them. Just like the old days, all us girls together. It looked perfect in theory. But appearances are deceiving. From our first day in Florence, something felt off. That uncomfortable sensation of being an uninvited guest at a private gathering. They shared inside jokes that excluded me, exchanged knowing looks I couldn't decode. I blamed it on travel exhaustion, or perhaps my natural reserve. Zanaya would always say, "You make yourself invisible, Odell. People don't know how to handle someone who disappears into herself." Our final evening, we dined at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Arno River. The setting was magical, twinkling lights hanging overhead, the magnificent Duomo illuminated against the night sky. The server filled champagne glasses while everyone laughed boisterously enough to draw stares. Zanaya commanded attention at the table's center, immaculate in her designer dress, recounting stories about her recent fundraiser. "I had the mayor's wife in tears before dessert arrived," she boasted. "Everyone kept asking if I held a position on the city council." When I attempted to share about an artist I'd discovered during my morning walk, someone interrupted. "You actually got up and went sightseeing that early?" Another added, "Must be wonderful having no actual responsibilities." I forced a smile, not from amusement, but self-preservation. I never wanted to disrupt the harmony. Instead, I discreetly handed the server a tip. Zanaya always created drama over splitting bills. I thought easing these small tensions might improve the atmosphere, but pressure doesn't dissolve. It intensifies. After 10 p.m., Dana, one of Zanaya's friends, scrutinized me through wine-blurred eyes and slurred, "So you're still at that charity place helping stray puppies or something, right?" I gently corrected her. "It's actually a legal advocacy center for survivors of domestic violence." Dana smirked. How adorable. Laughter circled the table. My chest tightened. "Listen," I said, setting down my utensils. "I'm not seeking praise, but maybe don't trivialize it as adorable." Zanaya exhaled dramatically. "Here we go again." "What do you mean?" I asked. "This," she announced loudly enough to silence everyone. "You sabotage every vacation with your sensitivity. Seriously, Odell, act your age." Silence fell. Even the waitstaff froze. My chair scraped against stone as I stood. Without a word, I walked away. The evening air felt colder than anticipated, or perhaps it was the burning in my face. I wandered aimlessly, letting the ambient sounds of motor scooters and nightlife fade into background noise. Around 11 p.m., I messaged Zanaya, "Meeting you at the hotel in 20. Then I stopped at a night cafe for water. I needed space, perspective, a moment's peace. When I arrived at our hotel, the bright lobby lights felt harsh. I greeted the receptionist with a polite smile. "Room 2113, please?" He glanced up, hesitating. "I believe your group checked out approximately half an hour ago." I stared. "Excuse me?" They arranged for their luggage to be collected for transportation. I struggled to understand. "My name isn't registered, but I'm traveling with them. I just took a short walk." He offered an apologetic expression. "They departed together. They left nothing for you." I rushed upstairs anyway. My keycard failed. My suitcase, passport, phone charger, all packed with the group luggage Zanaya had. Promise to safeguard. My throat constricted. I hurried downstairs, through the entrance, onto the street. Called Zanaya, straight to voicemail. Tried Dana, nothing. Checked the rental vehicle app. The van location showed they were already far north, leaving Florence behind. That's when reality struck. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. I examined the last group photo from dinner. Everyone smiling, glasses raised. But there in the corner was Zanaya, eyes locked on the camera with a subtle smirk, and in her left hand, partially concealed behind her back, my passport. She'd been holding it throughout dinner. Standing alone in that cobblestone plaza, I whispered words I'd never dared speak before. "You won't erase me this time, Zanaya." The words disappeared into the night, unheard by anyone but me. The square stood empty except for trash containers and pigeons pecking at leftover crumbs from someone else's celebration. I sat on a cold bench, arms wrapped around myself, still wearing yesterday's clothes, hoping against reason that someone would call to explain this misunderstanding. They didn't. Dawn arrived without compassion. I hadn't truly slept, just drifted, between consciousness, neck aching from the uncomfortable bench. Tourists whispered around me like I was a fixture of the plaza, something to observe without engaging. I checked my phone. 8% battery, no signal. I hoped Zanaya might have reached out after all. Nothing. I rose slowly, the kind of deliberate movement born from shock rather than tiredness, and searched my jacket for my wallet. It wasn't there. My heart raced as I inspected the small backpack I'd grabbed when leaving the restaurant. It wasn't mine. Not the leather bag Zanaya always called embarrassingly practical. This one was sparkly pink, cheaply made. Inside, a folded note mocked me. "Try not to cry. It's embarrassing." I clutched it like it might burst into flames. I made my way toward the tourist information center near the Duomo, attempting to determine my next steps. A woman behind the counter gave me a confused but polite look as I explained my predicament. No identification, no money, no Italian language skills. I showed her the strange backpack and gestured toward my phone, mouthing "charger." She handed me one with a sympathetic look. "Wait here," she said, disappearing into a back office. I sat near dusty travel brochures, connecting my phone beside a wobbly chair. I didn't care about comfort. I just needed one message, one lifeline. 10 minutes passed, then 20. No messages, no missed calls. I opened WhatsApp. The group chat labeled Amalfi Angels with Zanaya and her friends had vanished. Not inactive, completely gone. I had been removed. I swallowed hard and checked Instagram through the spotty Wi-Fi. Zanaya had posted recently, her and Dana wearing matching hats at a train platform, looking carefree. The caption read, "When dead weight disappears naturally, cha-cha good vibes and Lee." Below it, a heart reaction from our mother. I felt physically struck. I scrolled through my sister's profile. She had blocked me completely. No trace of me remained on her feed, in her stories, even in our old shared photos. I had been systematically erased. And Mom? No text asking if I was okay. Not even a question mark. I stared at my screen, thumb hovering, but realized there was no one left to contact. I wasn't surprised, really, just confirmed what I'd always suspected. It reminded me of last year when Zanaya asked the family to help launch her boutique candle business. I privately offered to co-sign her loan even though she hadn't asked me directly. She laughed in my face. "I'd rather destroy my credit than connect it financially to you. You bring nothing but complications." I'd forgotten that moment temporarily, allowed myself to believe in sisterhood. Thought perhaps this trip was her attempt at reconciliation. It wasn't. I left the information center, charger in hand, directionless. I wandered toward cypress trees lining the bus stop and sat in their shadow, fighting against spiraling thoughts. But one idea kept circling. They planned this deliberately. This wasn't an oversight, but entertainment for them. I imagined them in the van, laughing, playing guessing games about how long before I realized I'd been deserted. I could hear Zanaya's voice with perfect clarity. "She's always so serious. Maybe this will teach her to lighten up." Life sometimes presents moments when your options divide so cleanly it resembles a film script. Sitting beneath those trees with borrowed electricity and a fractured heart, I saw two paths. Option 1, contact the embassy, wait endless hours, process paperwork, possibly return home in 3 days. Option 2, find transportation to Rome immediately, intercept them before their flight. No shouting, no pleading, just appear. It would require more than anger. It would require determination and something I hadn't accessed in years, the belief that I deserved confrontation. I closed my eyes. If I let this pass, I whispered, it will never end. With 1 borrowed charger and 20 borrowed euros, I started toward the train station. The journey wasn't physically long, but felt endless. The charger dangled from my wrist like a lifeline, and those borrowed 20 euros burned in my pocket. Not because of the money itself, but because someone believed I might still find resolution. At the station, I waited behind a family with energetic children and a honeymooning couple arguing about seating arrangements. My thoughts drifted to Zanaya. Was she already checking into another Roman hotel, joking about how the extra baggage had conveniently disappeared? A kind older gentleman with accented English helped me purchase the cheapest ticket to Rome, 2nd class, unreserved seating. I thanked him with my limited Italian vocabulary and boarded with such unsteady breaths I needed to sit immediately. The train rocked gently through the Tuscan countryside. A young waitress across the aisle noticed my tear-stained face and passed me a napkin without speaking. I really looked at her and recognized something in her expression. Rough day? She asked softly. I nodded. Family troubles? She guessed. I laughed bitterly. Yes. She shared her story. Her brother hadn't spoken to her since she abandoned the family restaurant business to become a flight attendant. Her mother called her selfish. Her sister accused, "You think you're better than us." She wiped her hands on her uniform and said, "Sometimes those who raised you resent you most deeply." Her observation settled like a stone in my stomach. Strange how sharing someone else's pain made my own feel less isolating. When the train arrived at Rome's station, the platform buzzed with activity. I thanked her for the napkin and kindness. She smiled, pointing toward the front of the train. Work part-time at a hotel nearby. Heading anywhere specific? Just trying to find my family, I admitted. She paused briefly, then nodded slowly. If you need assistance, come to Hotel Ria. I'll be working the next shift. Rome smelled of exhaust, and ancient metal. The city pulsed with life, golden sunlight creating lengthy shadows across narrow streets. I walked purposefully toward their hotel, a sleek glass and marble structure that seemed to belong in another reality altogether. Inside, the receptionist, a young man with impeccable posture, regarded me with professional suspicion. "Do you have a reservation?" "No, but my sister Zinnia Vance is staying here with a group." He typed briefly on his keyboard. "I'm sorry. We don't have anyone registered under that name." I leaned closer, lowering my voice. "Please, I don't need accommodation. I just need to speak with her. Could you try Dana Cord or Rhea Maxwell?" His expression changed, clearly recognizing one name. Then he shook his head. "They're not accepting calls. Would you like to leave a message?" "No, I need to speak with them personally." His expression remained politely immovable. "I'm sorry, miss." I stepped back, chest tightening. As I turned to leave, I spotted her. The waitress from the train, now wearing a dark blazer with a name tag. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Wait," she whispered, approaching quickly. "You're her sister?" I nodded. She reached into her pocket and produced a key card. "She dropped this in the elevator last night. I plan to return it to reception, but perhaps you need it more." My fingers trembled receiving it. "Thank you." She nodded once and discreetly stepped away. I walked down the hallway slowly, heart thundering. The card slid easily into the door. Lock, click. Voices spilled into the corridor before I even pushed it open. "Honestly, it feels like a weight's been lifted," Dana said. "Please," Zanaya laughed. "She acts martyred constantly but only brings everyone down." "Wasn't there some emergency fund situation?" Rhea interjected. "Didn't your parents give her, 10,000 because she couldn't maintain employment?" Zanaya scoffed. "Only because they felt guilty. I told them not to bother. She hasn't earned anything. She contributes nothing." Their laughter cut sharply. familiarly cruel. I stood frozen, at the threshold, not entering, my throat constricted. That emergency fund they mentioned? I never received a cent. I'd heard whispers about it from Dad once, but when I questioned him, he dismissed it as creating drama from nothing. I thought I'd misunderstood, but no, Xenia had fabricated a narrative my parents perpetuated it, and now these women toasted to their liberation from my supposed emotional manipulation. They hadn't just abandoned me. They had reconstructed me entirely. I backed away silently, closed the door. At the corridor's end, I dropped the keycard deliberately where someone would discover it and wonder how it appeared there. I no longer needed it. Outside, Rome's afternoon. Air felt crisp. The sun descended below the skyline, painting buildings in amber and violet. I didn't cry. I simply walked, one foot after another, past fountains and laughing tourists, past alley cats and restaurants with tables extending, onto sidewalks. They wanted me erased, I whispered to myself. I'm about to become unforgettable. When Calder spoke my name, something inside me paused like an old wound exposed to fresh air. The cobblestones beneath me suddenly felt more stable than my heartbeat. He looked older naturally, softer around the eyes with a beard he didn't have during our teenage years, but his smile remained unchanged. Odell, he repeated. What brings you here? I opened my mouth, then closed it. What could I say? Oh, just abandoned in a foreign city by my sister and left with a stranger's backpack? Instead, I offered the only truth I could manage. Just needed some air. He chuckled softly, as if that made perfect sense. I'll take that as a sign. Let me buy you coffee. There's a quiet place around the corner. I should have declined, but something about Calder, his steady presence, his familiarity as someone who knew me before I became invisible within my own family, made walking away impossible. We crossed the street under Rome's darkening sky and settled at a small cafe nestled between ivy-covered buildings. How have you been? He asked gently. I let silence linger, trying to remember who I truly was. He studied me thoughtfully. You always defended underdogs, even when it meant taking hits yourself. That's how I remember you. I stared at my chipped espresso cup, throat burning. He continued. In 6th grade, when those boys stole my sketchbook, you tracked them down after school and retrieved it. You never told anyone. It just mysteriously appeared in my locker the following day. I remembered that. I also remembered Mom scolding me for arriving home late, accusing me of seeking drama for attention. You were the courageous one, Calder said. Even back then, I offered a tight smile. Not everyone perceived it that way. Your mother didn't, he stated bluntly. She intimidated me honestly. Always looked like she was calculating who didn't belong. That made me laugh, though hollowly. She calculated me out long ago. He leaned forward. I'm sorry. You deserved better. We sat quietly, letting that truth settle between us. Then Calder said something that electrified the air. I still remember your graduation speech, senior year, the honors address. I looked up, startled. You do? He nodded. I remember the thunderous applause. Except your mother never clapped. Just sat there, expressionless, arms crossed. My heart sank. That moment had haunted me for years, but I thought perhaps I'd imagined it. That memory had distorted with time. But Calder had witnessed it too, from outside my experience. Later that evening, he continued, I saw her embracing your sister in the parking lot. Something about community college acceptance. She skipped my honors banquet, I whispered. Said she was exhausted, but she found energy for the celebration at my sister's friend's house. Just like that, I was 17 again, sitting alone in my bedroom, formal shoes discarded, dress still on, waiting for a mother who never arrived. She always made me feel excessive, I said slowly. Too emotional, too complicated, like existing. Required apology. Calder's expression remained steady. He simply nodded understandingly. I wanted to write to you after moving away, he admitted. I couldn't articulate it then, but I recognized you deserved better. Always did. Something released inside me. Not weakness, but liberation. I allowed tears to fall freely, unconcerned about the couple at the neighboring table or the server, glancing our way. Calder didn't rush me, he simply remained present, like someone who'd waited years to acknowledge my truth. "Thank you," I said finally, wiping my face. "For remembering, for seeing me." He handed me a business card. "I work for a travel documentary channel now. We're hiring writers, remote position, flexible hours. If you ever want to tell meaningful stories, I think you have several worth sharing." I stared at the card, heart racing. "I think I needed this encounter," I said quietly. "You reminded me who I was before they started redefining me." We stood, embraced briefly, and I tucked the card into my bag like a treasure. That evening, returning to my modest hostel, I didn't feel defeated. I felt awake, truly present for the first time in years. I wasn't diminishing myself anymore. I wouldn't rush home. Not yet. I woke to my phone vibrating against the glass nightstand. The screen displayed 12 missed calls, 10 from my mother, 2 from my cousin Rena, and countless messages I wasn't prepared to read. I sat up, slowly, back aching from restless sleep. My mind replayed fragments of yesterday's conversation with Calder. His voice echoed, "You reminded me of someone who never stopped fighting, even when nobody applauded." But that momentary calm shattered when a Facebook notification appeared. I opened it. A new post from Zanaya showing her and Mom with Rena at a restaurant terrace, clinking mimosa glasses. Caption: "Best trip ever with real family." I examined the image closely. There I was in the original photo's corner, eyes closed, barely visible. But in this posted version, completely removed, cropped out as if I'd never been there. I scrolled to the comments, unable to resist. Curiosity sometimes wounds itself. "Did the moody one finally go home?" someone wrote. "Girl had zero energy, just tension," another commented. Then I saw it. My own mother had replied, "Sometimes it's better when certain people take space." My hand dropped to my lap, phone sliding face down onto the sheets. I remained motionless, staring at the cracked ceiling of my rented room. I kept hoping this was some twisted test I hadn't studied for, that perhaps they were trying to teach me about resilience. But no, they weren't testing me. They were systematically removing me. A new message appeared from Maeve, my college roommate back in Oregon, one of the few who maintained contact when I quietly left town years ago. "You okay? You need to..." "See this," she wrote, attaching a screenshot. It showed a group chat titled Odell Drama Dump, my sister's private conversation. Zania had written, "She always ruins everything." This trip was for us, not her emotional baggage. Rena added, "Can't believe she still thinks she's family. That's the saddest part." Someone I didn't recognize replied, "She plays victim extraordinarily." Well, too bad it doesn't include a return ticket. I felt my chest constrict, not like heartbreak, but like being pulled underwater without oxygen. I played my voicemail, already anticipating regret. My mother's calm, measured voice filled the silence. "Odell, I hope you're not magnifying this situation. You're creating difficulties again. Please avoid making a scene. Come home when you're ready to behave like family." The word family felt like gravel in my throat. She always used phrases like that. Behave like family. Code for don't embarrass us. Code for remain silent. Accept it. Don't create waves. But I wasn't a child anymore. I wasn't the girl who wept silently in her bedroom while everyone exchanged presents downstairs. I wasn't the one who missed prom because Zanaya said, "You just make everything awkward." I picked up my phone, hands steady now, not from fear but clarity. I canceled my return flight. I opened my laptop. The words flowed effortlessly. They'd been simmering inside. Me for years. Family doesn't abandon you in a foreign country. They don't erase you from photographs, then celebrate your absence. They don't label you dramatic while orchestrating their betrayal. I paused, fingers hovering above the keyboard. They call me a burden, but I carried more than they'll ever acknowledge. Saved the draft. For the first time in days, I didn't feel invisible. My finger hovered above the publish button briefly, then pressed it. I stared at the screen, hardly breathing, half expecting the world to ignore me just as my family had for years. But within minutes, engagement began. 3 hours later, the post had over 2,000 likes. By hour 4, comments flooded in from across the country. This happened to me, too. Your sister sounds exactly like mine. My mother did identical things. You're not alone. Someone even commented. I recognize that restaurant in Rome. They look so artificial smiling without you. I refreshed continuously, watching the response grow. This wasn't about virality. It was about finally being heard, just once. Then came the inevitable backlash. Zenaya's name appeared in my inbox. Subject: Take this down. Odell, what the hell is wrong with you? That post grossly exaggerates everything. You're making our family look terrible to strangers. Remove it immediately or face consequences. An hour later, my phone vibrated with a voicemail. Mom, you always portray yourself as the victim, don't you? We included you on this trip to reconnect, and this is your gratitude? You're damaging our family reputation. I sat on my bed's edge, staring at my reflection in the dark television screen. She still called it family, as if I'd ever been treated like a genuine member. I reopened the post and added one line. If they didn't want everyone to know, they shouldn't have done it. I walked to the kitchenette, poured lukewarm tap water, trying to steady my breathing. The door was locked, curtains drawn, yet I still felt exposed. By evening, the consequences expanded. My work phone rang, an Oregon number I recognized immediately. HR. Odell, hi, came Meredith's voice from People Operations. We received an anonymous email this morning linking to your recent social media activity. There's concern about emotional stability during international travel. My stomach dropped. Excuse me? We're temporarily suspending your access while we investigate. It's standard procedure. Standard procedure. Someone had reported me professionally, and I knew exactly who. Either Zenaya, calculated and vindictive, or Mom, always strategically protecting the family image. I didn't cry, though I wanted to. God knows I wanted to scream. Fly home immediately. March into that office demanding fairness. Instead, I opened my email, attached my therapist's recommendation letter from last year's sabbatical, and included screenshots of Zenaya and Rena's leaked messages about me. For context, I wrote, this triggered my response. Before sending, I replayed an old voicemail, one from my father, left years before his passing, when I was between jobs, briefly living in my car, too ashamed to call home. His voice cracked, saying, I know they make you feel unwelcome, but you're my favorite kind of storm. Quiet, but unstoppable. My throat tightened. The grief remained. So did the pride. Calder texted then. Don't return for them. Stay for yourself. I created a new document, typing at the top, things I was never permitted to say. Then I visited LinkedIn, copied my statement, pasted it, professional, dignified, adding one final sentence. Character isn't forged in quiet households. It's revealed when you survive chaotic ones. I clicked publish. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was the breath held before a storm breaks. I hadn't even brushed my teeth when the first message arrived. No greeting, no pleasantries, just a direct, chilling statement. I think. You've just described my cousin's identical experience. Your sister is toxic. Want evidence? Initially, I stared at it, blinking against my phone's brightness. My pulse quickened as I examined the sender's profile. Her name was Alessa Crowley, UX designer in London. We shared 3 mutual connections, one being Zenaya. I responded cautiously. Evidence of what? She replied almost instantly, sending a screenshot of an old group chat I recognized. The one Zenaya used for coordinating family events, holidays, birthdays, and apparently character assassination campaigns. The image showed messages from 3 years earlier. Zenaya had written, She acts entitled to our love simply for existing. Watch her beg for approval like a stray outside the door. My throat tightened. I remembered that exact week. I'd traveled home for Dad's minor surgery. I brought homemade soup, managed his medications, scheduled his follow-up appointments. And while I folded laundry in their basement, my sister was mocking me online. Alessa followed with another message. I distanced myself from Zanaya after that trip. I couldn't tolerate how she treated people. You weren't the only one she tried to erase. Want to meet? An hour later, I sat across from her in a cafe near Trastevere, morning light casting long shadows through dusty windows. Alessa looked different from my memory, hair shorter now, voice steadier. But there was unexpected comfort in how directly she addressed truths. She uses people, Alessa said matter-of-factly, stirring her espresso. I think fundamentally, she envies anyone capable of existing without constant validation. I remained silent, processing. Then she reached into her purse and handed me a small USB drive. These are photos Zanaya deleted from our shared cloud storage. I saved them before she revoked access. Thought you might want them back. Later, viewing the files on my laptop, I found images from a beach vacation I barely remembered. In every photo, I was either cropped, blurred, or strategically blocked by something. A towel, someone's hand, a turned head. It was like watching my existence being methodically erased from collective memory. But one photograph stood out. Me and Zanaya as children sitting before Mom's boutique. I held a melted popsicle and wore mismatched socks. Zanaya had braided hair and crossed arms. Mom stood behind us smiling, but only at Zanaya. I posted it without caption, just 3 words. The girl removed. It took seconds to publish. Comments appeared immediately. I recognize this store. They did this to my sister too. So this is how families maintain their image. Then a tag. My cousin Adrienne in Boston. Oh my God, they did this to me too. The family group chat exploded. I was removed, then re-added by Uncle Ron. Then a message from my mother appeared, as polished and cold as her Sunday church smile. What are you trying to accomplish with our family? I paused before responding, my hands perfectly steady. What? I should have done 10 years ago. Tell the truth. Her typing indicator blinked for a full minute, then vanished. Back at my hotel, I handed my key to reception for fresh towels when the clerk nodded toward the lobby. Someone's here for you. She says she's your sister. My posture straightened instinctively. My hands remained calm. I didn't ask which sister, I already knew. Zanaya stood by the marble planter, hands clasped, wearing that practiced, neutral expression, reserved for funerals and legal proceedings. She hadn't come to apologize. I could tell from her rigid jawline, the way her eyes scanned the room first, ensuring no one recorded this encounter. She didn't want reconciliation. She wanted control. For the first time, I refused to surrender it. She remained standing. Zinnia faced me in the lobby like awaiting a tardy assistant, sunglasses still on indoors, lips pressed into a tight, unyielding line. You've gone too far, she stated, voice controlled but sharp. No greeting, no hint of remorse, just control. Slipping from beneath her carefully chosen words. I stayed seated, elbows on knees, hands clasped to prevent trembling, not from fear but restraint. Too far? I echoed, raising an eyebrow. You abandoned me in a foreign country without money, phone, or transportation. I'd say you crossed too far by several time zones. She rolled her eyes as if I were performing a dramatic monologue. It was a misunderstanding. She shrugged. We assumed you were meeting your Portland friend. That's how she presented it. A simple misunderstanding. As if canceling my hotel reservation and omitting me from travel arrangements was merely a scheduling oversight. Minutes later, I suggested moving outside. I needed fresh air and fewer witnesses. The hotel garden offered tranquility. Marble benches, manicured hedges, delicate fountains pretending this wasn't evolving into a confrontation zone. Zanaya finally removed her sunglasses, though her bright gaze remained unchanged. Listen, she began. If you delete the post, I'll resolve things with Mom. She listens to me. I laughed quietly. You honestly believe you control access to our mother? You methodically removed me from the family narrative, and now you claim to hold the keys back in? Zanaya stepped closer, voice lowering as if intimidation still worked on me. Keep broadcasting this publicly, and I'll ensure nobody believes. Your victim narrative? Not online, not professionally, not anywhere. I didn't flinch. Instead, I retrieved my phone and selected a saved contact. She froze when the screen displayed the name, Attorney Lisa Merriman, Probate and Financial Law. I activated speakerphone. Lisa, you're on. Would you mind repeating your findings? The voice responding sounded calm and professional. Yes, Odell. We've traced the digital submission trail. Someone filed power of attorney documents for your mother with your signature forged as witness and alternate signatory. That person, based on IP address and login credentials, was Zenaya Vance. Zenaya's complexion drained like I'd disconnected. Her power source. Her jaw locked, hands clutching her purse strap so tightly I thought it might break. We're pursuing legal action, I continued. I'm recording this conversation for documentation. I observed her closely. This was the first time in our shared history when she wasn't controlling the situation, and she recognized it. Odell, she finally said, voice trembling slightly, you wouldn't drag this through court. I stood slowly, deliberately. Watch me. Her mouth opened in protest, but nothing emerged. She turned, stormed toward the garden's rear exit, heels clicking furiously, sunglasses repositioned, head high but shoulders slumped. She appeared smaller than I remembered, perhaps missing the power she'd worn like perfume throughout her life, or perhaps facing truth finally louder than her manufactured narrative. That evening in my room, I sat on the bed's edge gazing at Rome's lights. I should have felt exhausted, but instead felt lightness, not because the storm had passed, but because I'd finally stopped avoiding it. My phone notified me, Delta, your flight to Portland confirmed. I stared at the message, then glanced at my half-packed luggage. Something felt different. This time, I whispered to the empty room, I'm not escaping, I'm flying free. I secured the final compartment when knocking interrupted the silence. I stood slowly, heart steady, but the voice outside wasn't Zenaya's. It was my mother's. The knocking wasn't frantic, but soft, measured. I opened cautiously, still gripping my luggage strap. My mother stood there, not resembling the woman who commanded attention at fundraisers or church functions. Her hair seemed too tightly pinned, her blouse slightly wrinkled. The gleam in her eyes wasn't confidence, but something closer to fatigue. May I come in? She asked. Not a demand or performance, just a question carried by someone uncertain, of welcome. I stepped aside. She entered without further words, settling on the small sofa's edge like an unsure guest arriving at an inconvenient hour. I poured water into 2 glasses. It was too early for tea, too late for explanations, but we began anyway. We sat silently, traffic noise outside filling the space between us. Finally, she cleared her throat and looked at me. Not directly, but enough to suggest she was working, through rehearsed thoughts and failing. I knew what Zenaya did, she began. I remained expressionless. I didn't intercede because I instructed her to handle you. I told her not to involve me. I simply didn't want to manage it. Manage it. That's what I'd become, a situation, a responsibility to delegate. She didn't seek my reaction, perhaps knowing better than to expect tears. You were always the quiet one, she said, the strong one. I assumed you'd be fine. I sat motionless, jaw clenched so tightly I could hear my breath against my teeth. It wasn't just the words themselves, but how easily they emerged, as if strength justified abandonment. I was never fine, I said. I just stopped showing you how deeply it hurt. She nodded once, slowly, as if perhaps she'd heard this before, but never believed it until now. Her gaze drifted to my wrist, the twisted wire bracelet I'd purchased from a Cortona Street artisan. Your father bought me one similar to that during our first trip to Italy, she murmured. Said it resembled something strong that learned to bend. I touched it unconsciously. I used to find comfort in these connections, shared tastes, parallel experiences. Now it simply reminded me how long I'd mistaken physical proximity for emotional connection. She reached out reflexively as if to touch it too, but withdrew before making contact. There were no tears, no raised voices, just gravity between us, history requiring no repetition. I stood quietly, grasping my suitcase. I won't publicly humiliate you, I said. I won't transform this into a spectacle. Her shoulders relaxed slightly, but then I added, but I'm finished pretending. I won't act like this never happened. I will no longer diminish myself for your comfort. She finally met my gaze, voice subdued. So, this is the end? I looked directly at her. No, this is me. Morning sunlight streamed across the city when I exited the hotel. Streets already bustled with the energy of a metropolis indifferent to personal healing or heartbreak. I welcomed that anonymity. The taxi ride proceeded quietly. I didn't check messages. Whatever arrived next could wait. At the terminal, I presented my passport and boarding pass. The gate agent offered the kind of sincere smile only strangers provide. Final boarding, Ms. Vance. I nodded. One bag, a bracelet, and finally, no more silence. They say blood connections outweigh all others, but sometimes water flows more freely when blood tries to drown you. So I walked forward, not embittered, not broken, just complete. Tell me, what would you have done if your family abandoned you and called it a joke?